competent doctors, science. In the 1960s, the late 1960s, the Surgeon General started a study in the United States military of young soldiers who were going to war, and they found this new disease called cholesterol. And they were finding out that cholesterol was causing heart attacks and a lot of problems in the forces. They were losing young men to heart attacks. So they started a study of where this cholesterol could be coming from. Well, lo and behold, they wasn't the first ones that discovered where this stuff come from, because in the old book of Leviticus, it gives us some idea of what we're supposed to do and some things that we're not supposed to do. What do you think about that? Before we get too deep into the sermon, I want to talk to you just a minute about the creation of heaven and earth, of light and of the firmament. Let me make sure I get my spectacles on, because I don't want to mispronounce or miscommunicate anything. I need to get me a necklace that holds my spectacles so I can always have them in front of me when I need them. The creation of the heaven and the earth, of light and of the firmament, the earth separated from the waters and made fruitful, the creation of the sun, the moon, stars, of the fish and fowl, of the beasts and cattle, creation of man in the image of God, and in his blessing, the appointment of food. As you see, the first book of Genesis goes through a stage of creation. And as the book is written, as this holy book is told over the generations, it just doesn't skip around. It goes from a graduation from where the earth was created to where the earth was raised up from the water. Even the sun and the moon, the stars were placed in their specific places. The fish and fowl, the beasts and cattle, the creation of man in the image of God. Is that what it says? Let's find out. In the first book of Genesis, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from waters." So the earth's starting to rise up and be created now. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven gather together into one place, and let dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called by the seas. And God saw that it was good too. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And it was good. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And in the evening and in the morning were the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of heaven to give upon the earth." And it was so. It was completed. The stars were placed in their perfect order. The moon was set. to shine in the night, to let mankind know that darkness will not always prevail. Even when we have a new moon, it is total darkness all night long. But God give us lunar orbited planetation above our earth to let mankind know that during the night that there will be still light. In the beginning of time, God did this for a purpose. The purpose that I give you an example for may not be God's purpose. I don't know. But it's what God tells me. God tells me that when nightfall comes and I look up into the heavens and the stars, there's many stars. And that tells me right there that there are angelic beings that will be sent for a comfort to us in the last days. And when I look up at the moon, I see that there's light. But not only are there light, but it's in a circle, the form of a circle. And there's actually not just plain light. When I look at the moon, there's shapes. And if you look through a telescope, there's more than just shape. There's craters and sea of tranquility and all these other things that have been given name by man. But that tells me something else. That, lo, child, just because nightfall comes, daylight will surely come. That tells me that's kind of like God's Son. To never give up the promise that I'm coming back. That in the day I'm coming back. You know what? God gives us that example from the first of creation, doesn't He? That I'm coming back. God does not say things that are not true. God means what He says. God also says what He means. Turn to the book a little bit. Get it in Leviticus. As we are going to the 18th chapter. The world that we live in has come unto a vote now. Now our Supreme Court and our Supreme Justice Roberts has decided that he's going to vote in gay marriage this week. It's all in the news. It's all over television. It's all debates on television. The great, wonderful, powerful CNN and Fox and NBC and CBS and all these channels know what to feed on. They know how to feed on this stuff. News and this gay movement. You know, at one time we had to start accepting folks that had decided a new lifestyle. They started coming out of the closet early on. But the whole world is really being shocked. They're under such shock that this gay marriage thing is, well, what has happened in the world? Well, this is the first time this has ever happened. No, it's not. No, it's not. But what we want to talk about this morning is that history is history for a purpose. This Holy Bible has a lot of history in it. But we study history for a purpose, do we not? Mm-hmm. We study history so we don't make the mistakes of making the same mistakes over again. Right? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be my interpretation of why we have history. As we just learned, where in the first book of Genesis, God created man. And from man, He also created woman. He took a rib from Adam, and from the dust He created Eve, a mate for Adam. And they consummated each other. And in the nakedness of Eden, Adam and Eve become husband and wife. Did they have a $30,000 and an entourage of black limousines out front? And a $20,000 dinner and an ice sculpture and all this stuff that took place? America has this understanding that marriage is going into a church, or going into a wedding chapel, or going before a magistrate, or going before somebody that can just sign off and put hand in hand or friend in friend, and they're life partners in life forever. That's really not where marriage starts. Bible tells us that marriage starts when one human being is with another human being in a closeness that God has interpreted. God's the creator of love. God created love. God created the planets. He created the earth. He created everything we know, our mind, our senses, our feelings of hurt, our happiness, our joy. God created all this stuff. He created the natural use of a man and a woman for the purpose of regenerating our very beings. There's a right way and a wrong way about everything. The book of Romans tells us that they became envious, boasters, lovers of their own selves. An abomination in those last days. Well, it's happening. Out front, I lowered the flag this morning to fly at half-mast. Usually that's in the sign that a death has happened in society and that somebody famous has died. But in our circumstance, we're repeating history. You say, Pastor, how in the world are we repeating history when this is the first time I've ever heard about it? Well, I'm going to give you a little history lesson this morning, and the man's name is Nero. Anybody ever heard of him? The name Nero is proverbial for murder, rape, sodomy, incest, cruelty, and every kind of crime imaginable is what the name Nero stands for. He was a Roman emperor from 37 to 68 AD. That means after Christ's death, right? That means Jesus has already come to the earth and offered his example in healing, bringing the dead back to life. They're gone back still. And they're still having fresh memory, 37 to 68 AD. That means that somebody is still living the same day Christ was crucified. And they have fresh memories of who this Jesus was. A man that could walk on the water. A man that could heal the blind, make the lame walk again. 37 years later, a man named Nero comes into power. And the debauchery of marrying women to women, man to man, did it happen? Yes, sir, Bob. It sure did. That's not all that happened. He didn't do debaucheries as so far as to marry with the usual formalities of marriage. But when the ceremony was over, he had him conducted like a bride in his own house and treated him as his wife. It was perverse. How can history repeat itself again? Nero was eventually the destruction of Rome. Rome finally failed in a fury fire. Am I right or am I wrong? Don't be afraid to correct me if I'm wrong, but I've done my homework. I'm kind of reluctant to read about that this is not the first time that it's happened. But marriage doesn't necessarily happen in a church. That is just another way that we complete the ceremony. Young man or young woman that may venture to the back seat of a vehicle in the countryside, know this, what the God says, that if you partake in a sexual performance, at that moment you really become married. Do you know that? Did we forget that? In the book of Leviticus, when the Egyptians came out and Moses was leading them out of Egypt,